Oh, wait a minute. Are you that guy who didn't go through Unit 2 yet? Well, lucky for you, I'm actually drawing out neural circuitry right now. So come on with me, I'll teach you. Alright, let's start with an excitatory circuit. So we have an action potential propagate down this first neuron, triggering the release of neurotransmitters in the terminal. So for excitatory, these neurotransmitters released in the synaptic cleft are actually going to be glutamate. So on these postsynaptic densities here, we'll have receptors for glutamate, which are actually called AMPA receptors. They're ionotropic, meaning once glutamate binds to them, there'll be a conformational change in the protein, opening it, allowing for an influx of sodium into the cell. So this will cause an EPSP, or an excitatory postsynaptic potential, where we start at rest, which is at negative 70 millivolts, and we'll see this depolarization, short depolarization happen. So enough of these happen, we'll get sodium to diffuse down all the way to the axon hillock. And if enough EPSPs occur in the axon hillock, we'll reach threshold, which will allow for the activation of voltage-gated sodium channels, and this will allow for an action potential to occur, so we get enough EPSPs to reach threshold, allowing for our typical action potential. And then of course voltage-gating potassium channels also open up, allowing for this classic shape to occur. So sodium will diffuse down through the myelin sheath, and then another action potential will occur at each node as the action potential is propagated down. This will allow for depolarization of the axon terminal, and we'll get calcium-gated, voltage-gated calcium channels to open, which will allow for the influx of calcium ions, which cause the vesicles to fuse with the membrane and release their neurotransmitters. This is also going to be an excitatory, because we're still in an excitatory circuit. So we'll again get glutamate to be released, and again we'll bind to AMPA receptors. And we'll get the same depolarization. Enough depolarization in the axon hillock will cause an action potential to propagate down, and that's your excitatory circuit. So an inhibitory circuit, is actually going to look very similar to the excitatory. We'll still get glutamate to be released in the first one, we'll still bind to AMPA, we'll still get this depolarization effect, this threshold to be reached in the second neuron in the axon hillock. We'll get the action potential to be propagated down to each node all the way to the terminal. We'll get the influx of calcium again through the opening of voltage-gated calcium channels. However, this time, the neurotransmitters that fuse in the vesicles to the membrane and are released are actually going to be GABA receptors, which are inhibitory, and they will bind to ionotropic receptors similar to AMPA, but now they're going to bind to receptors called GABA A receptors. Again, they're ionotropic, so as the ligand GABA binds to them, they'll cause a conformational change. But this time, chloride ions are going to actually flow in to the cell. And unlike sodium, chloride is actually going to cause hyperpolarization. So if we have enough of these IPSPs, or inhibitory postsynaptic potentials, which cause hyperpolarization, we'll get the chloride to diffuse down into the cell, and they'll reach the axon hillock, where they'll actually make it harder for an action potential to be propagated or induced because of the hyperpolarization at the cause of the chloride. So will actually see no action potential get triggered.